Welcome to the Addison Township Board meeting. Today is July 19th at 6 o'clock. If we could all stand for the pledge, please, and Ed, when I please start off.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please stay
Keep
standing.
standing, please.
Dear Lord, now thank you for bringing us all together. Guide this township board with your miraculous wisdom. In the Lord's name we pray. Amen. Thank you.
Roll call.
Yes. Karen Geiger. Here. Lynn Garrett. Here. Edward Hill.
Here.
Lori Fisher. Here. Bennett President. Supervisor Pearson.
Here. Okay. Any announcements? Announcements? Department reports, as usual, available in my office. All you have to do is contact myself or my deputy. Any petitions?
No.
Order of business, approval of the agenda, please.
I so move to approve the agenda as presented. Support.
Discussion? We're going to go call on that, please.
Lynn Garrett.
Yes.
Edward Hill.
Yes?
Lori Fisher.
Yes.
Karen Geiger.
Yes.
Bennett, yes. Supervisor Pearson.
Yes. Okay, consent agenda.
Yes, we actually have a short one. Approval of the minutes for June, approval of the bills for June, appointment of James Fitzpatrick as a park ranger, resolution for administration of the American Rescue Fund Act.
I'll go ahead and make that motion to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? We have roll call, please.
Karen Geiger.
Yes.
Lori Fisher.
Yes.
Linda Garrett.
Yes.
Edward Hill.
Yes?
Bennett, yes. Supervisor Pearson.
Yes. Item number 2. Now, we're scheduled to have a public hearing resolution for Consumers Energy Company gas franchise ordinance 21-1. This happens every 30 years with when the ordinance expires and a new ordinance is adopted to take its place. Our current ordinance expires on November 2021. The company requested this to process a few months in advance. Township Legal reviewed the ordinance and the notice. Bob Davis approved all of it. I am quite happy, first of all, with consumers. They've made a world of difference when we brought natural gas into our rural areas and kept our seniors in their homes, and now they have all kinds of help with the heat program and different things like that instead of the ups and downs of propane and electric. I did notice that Ed noticed that in other communities, the language is stronger for the conditions of consumers. I'm okay with letting Mr. Davis review this. I see that like Waterford had a little bit stronger language on putting stuff back together from consumers when they dig up certain areas. But I'm okay with our Mr. Davis, our township attorney, looking at this and seeing if we need stronger language or not. And I'm glad that that was brought up so we make sure that we're made whole after any big disturbances. But we will have a hearing because it was advertised, so everybody is here for that hearing, it looks like. I'd like to open the public hearing, and we'll call it at 6:04. Does anybody have anything they'd like to say about the Consumers Energy Gas Franchise Ordinance? I suspect that you're all here for the gas ordinance. No? Everybody's happy with the natural gas? Well, I'll close the hearing. Well, I'll ask one more time, just so that's on the record, that I ask one more time. Anybody like to speak on the natural gas ordinance for consumers? And not hearing any, I'd like to close the meeting at 6:05. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to table the request if our attorney would like to look it over, see if we need some stronger language. So we have a motion.
I'll support.
And we have support. Do we have any further comments? Do we have roll call on that, please?
Yes. Linda Garrett.
Yes.
Edward Hill.
Yes?
Lori Fisher.
Yes.
Karen Geiger.
Yes.
Bennett, yes. Supervisor Supervisor Pearson?
Yes. And we'll review that and bring it back next month. Item number 3. Would be the appointment of a township trustee, partial term. It's with great sadness that we'll miss Chuck. And at this time, we must appoint a new trustee. Yes.
I'd like to go ahead and make that request that we appoint Jacob Newby as our new trustee.
That motion?
Yes.
I support that. I think Jacob did a great job. He has years of experience on this board in the exact same position. I know we have some fine candidates here, but we need somebody that can step into the role. So I'll support that.
And that's a second. So we have a motion and a second for Jacob Newby to fill the partial term that was vacated or opened by Chuck Sargent. We can open it for discussion now, if anybody has anything to discuss.
I have
The
something.
board, yes, go ahead.
I didn't know that Jacob was, wanted to be considered until about 4:45 today, so I had I have 3 now resumes. Kenby Mathias, I don't know if I'm saying the name right, and Ron Renaud, and then Jacob Newby, so my
What
thought.
we're talking about is a Jacob Newby right now, okay?
Right, and what I'd like to say is that I thought it would have been nice to hear from all 3 of the candidates before we made a
We
motion.
have a
and-
motion and we have a second. If you have something to say about the motion and the second by Jacob Newby, that's what the motion is right now.
Right, and what I'm saying is that I think we should have an open discussion about it. It's not that I don't
I just
support.
explained, we have a motion and we have a support.
You can table it to hear from these
It's
other
about-
candidates.
But we have a motion and we have a support. And if you have something to add about Jacob Newby, that's what we want to hear.
Okay, the only thing I'd like to say is that I know Jacob did serve on the board for 4 years. I know him personally, do some things in the Republican Party as well. However, I see that there are 2 other candidates that are well-established in the community who present some good attributes that should be considered. So I would just like to leave those comments out there.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else on the board? Have any other comments?
I would reiterate what Karen just said, that's, I guess, a little disappointing in the process.
We have a motion, we have a second.
Which can be tabled.
Do we have any other comment from the board? Do a roll call, please.
Karen Darrow.
No.
Jody Garrett.
Yes.
Ed Brightfield.
Yes.
Lori Fisher.
No.
Bennett, yes. Supervisor Pearson?
Yes. Motion passes.
I'll become the chair.
Okay.
Now you can hear it from anybody else.
That will be public forum.
But you've already selected one, is that correct? Just to clarify,
In public forum, you'll be able to.
but nobody else can have a chance?
Well,
I just want to clarify.
you can speak in public forum, yes.
So you've already selected a trustee, in other words, right?
Yes.
That's our job. yes.
That's your job, not to listen to the public.
This board is outrageous. It's a dictatorship.
Which is discussion of the American Rescue Plan Act funds and possible uses.
Useless.
Discussion of the American Plan and possible uses, okay, this was tabled last month, and we had suggestions for broadband for the residents who don't have service in our township. That's one of the suggestions, because that's what the government is allowing us to use the rescue funds for. We had residents suggested for water testing and septic systems. I'm not sure if we qualify for that. The township is getting an estimated $648,840. I had a meeting with all the other township supervisors today, and we're all in the same boat. There's very few things that they're allowing us at this point to use that money for. And Wi-Fi is one of them. We heard that possibly we might be able to use it for roads and bridges. But when I listened to what they said, that we had to have our treasurer determine whether or not we qualify for the 4.1 annual growth revenue loss. because of the COVID, and maybe I'll ask the treasurer if she could maybe have those figures for us next month, so that we can see if we can even qualify for any improvements on the roads and the bridges. But other than that, I'm asking the board if they have any ideas what they'd like to use this on at this time. I know I sent the proper paperwork, the signatures, to the treasurer to make sure that we have all of this in. It has to be in by the 27th, is that correct?
It has been submitted.
It's been submitted, and we want to make sure that we have it. That was reiterated at the supervisors' meetings, the OCAT's meetings of all the supervisors today, and everybody has submitted that paperwork in. Once that's submitted the 27th, then we qualify for the funds, and then it goes from the Michigan Treasury to our Treasury, and that's why I have Lori handling the actual exchange of the money. Once we get the money, then it's up to this board to determine what we wish to do with the money.
Would we be premature if we try to come up with suggestions tonight before we even?
I'm open to anything. Like I said, I talked to Congresswoman Slotkin, and she said that it's a moving target, and she knows that it might be changing. So, and given the other supervisors, their updates were that they heard that there might be some other options coming up because in Washington things are changing a little bit as to the infrastructure bill and different things like that. So maybe we'll be able to use that. But at this time, the infrastructure is, and all the top 5 townships all the way across northern Oakland County, we all said that with the pandemic and everything, we did find out that our kids were at a huge disadvantage because they could not do their homework or anything at home because we didn't have Wi-Fi or internet access to the rural areas consistently. So, and that's what the government is looking at, to get internet out to the rural areas of all of the United States. So anyways, if anybody have any suggestions?
I spoke out last month that I would really like to see everyone in Addison Township be able to have broadband, and I think Ron found some help for his, and if we go down that road, I would really like to pick his brain on that. But if we qualify for the 4-to-1, it opens up some of our choices, not only roads, township fire halls, fire stations, outdoor recreation facilities, installation, maintenance, and utilities. Some of the stuff you probably wouldn't want to do, but I think I gave everyone this form so that you can see that it does open the road a little bit more if we do qualify under the 4-to-1 annual.
And that was one thing that was brought up at the OCAT's meeting, which is that we may be able to use some of that for, on the Pollyant Trail if all the other communities wanted to do it, also Orion, Oxford, and Addison. So those are possibilities anyhow.
I have a comment.
Yes.
I'd like to see the money go into a category of investing in water, sewer, and broadband, but I'm curious if investing in like a cell phone tower or something that could bring us back some money would fall under that category. I first think that it's a waste of money.
Karen, and that's why I kind of wanted to start the discussion, because I think what I would like to do is if the board wants to go forward with broadband, there is an organization that's set up in Lansing. I would want to contact them. I also want to go and try to contact the county and find out what's the latest and greatest and what avenue should we take. And then also we would have to ask the state if the cell tower would be acceptable. So that's why I kind of want to get this going now, because there's going to be a lot of research involved. Ron, what's the name of the unit, Ron? Starlink. So he bought Starlink and it's working fine where he's at, and each unit is $500. So it's like, there's a lot of different ways we need to research to come up with a possible best solution.
I would be very interested in that. I did have conversations with Verizon, and even if something was ever approved, even now, they're like 3 years out for a tower. So
How much does a tower cost? Is that
I thought it was somewhere, the last estimate I had was somewhere around $600,000-800,000. So I'm just.
Well, that's a good idea, because then you would get rid of.
Well, we have several years to spend the money, so.
But they are putting a tower right now, everybody from Addison Township, if you travel southbound on Rochester Road, they have a tower that's going up right now at Stony Creek and Rochester, which everybody knows that's a dead zone all the way until you get into Rochester. So hopefully that will be fixed. And that one is on a rush order, that got put through Oakland Township really quickly compared to normal approvals. But that is in the process right now, they're putting in the lines and everything, the underground electrical and stuff. So, you know, even if we do it, it's gonna be a few years before they can even get to it. So, any other suggestions?
My comment was that I thought that plan was good. I just was curious on what it cost, and I'd love to see more information.
Well,
Somebody's working on it, so.
And I've heard about the, is it what's it called?
Starlink.
Yeah, Starlink, and I
There's a
think,
few others that are out there that I can give you a list of.
yeah, and
A lot of different
Supervisor
things.
in Highland Township was talking about that in their area, because they also have the same problem we do, and that's an option. So, and I believe that's all with satellites.
That's correct.
Correct. And,
My car has.
and it's
Starlink.
supposed to be even faster than wire. It's supposed to be.
Yeah, right now I'm getting about anywhere from 60 to about 80 megabytes per second. It's supposed to go up to well over 300 within the next year or so.
The monthly rate on that though is like $75 or.
$99 a month right now. It's in
It's
beta phase.
$99 a month?
Yeah, it's in beta phase right now.
Is that including the units? or
The unit
that's
is
just the service?
$500 for the dish, which comes assembled and it has its own heater, so during the winter time it melts off the eggs, ice and snow. It self-aligns to the satellites. It's very intuitive type system. Like I said, there's other methods that they can employ in their township. And I would love to go over with you guys.
So there's required levels in order to meet it.
Correct, the 25 megabytes per second, I think, is a requirement currently, 25 with 10.
With 3 MBS
Yeah,
upload.
3 on upload, 25 megabytes.
And then it says required level 100 Mbps symmetrical upload or download. And then they do give you an exception, but then you have to actually ask them for an
Correct.
exception, so.
But if you have any information on that, we would really appreciate you telling us about it. And I believe it's something to do with who's Tesla. Is he the one that's?
Yeah, he's the one that runs Tesla, correct?
Yeah, so he's very innovative, so this is probably something on the horizon that everybody's gonna be using. So, well, thank you. Does the board have any other suggestions? Okay, well, I don't think we have to,
Are we going to table per month until we see if we qualify for the other items, or are we going to go forward, I guess is my question. The quarter one.
well, that's up to the board. What would you like to do?
I'd like to make a motion that we table it for another month while more information becomes available and we have more time to think about our options.
Yeah, and I'll second that.
We have a second?
I agree.
Any discussion then? Okay, Woody, roll call that, please.
Linda Garrett.
Yes.
Karen Garland.
Yes.
Ed Rickville.
Yes.
Lori Fisher.
Yes.
Bennett, yes. Supervisor Pearson.
Yes. I believe that we will come up to public forum. At this time, we usually limit people to 3 minutes. And if you would like to come up and speak, if you just stand and tell us who you are, and go ahead and tell us. This is where we listen, though, we don't interact, but we do listen, okay? This is where you get your date for us to listen. Is there anybody? Yes, go ahead.
I would like to start out by saying I came to support Ron Renault tonight.
Oh, hello, your name?
My name is Ruth Hallett,
Yes.
because Ron Renault is actually the person who said to me, go to the board meetings, find out what's going on in your community, and he encouraged me in that. And I know that he's a really good person, and I know that he has done a lot of different things in his life and worn a lot of different hats, and is pretty knowledgeable about a lot of things, and I think he would have brought a lot to the board, and I'm sorry that he wasn't able to be, like, at least we didn't even get to speak out to support him.
Thank you.
And then I would like to say that, when they talked about pensions a little bit last week, at this point in time, GM and Ford are walking away from pensions. And I don't know if it's really necessarily the best thing for a government, local government, to decide to pick up pensions at that point. And I think that's coming from a place where my husband is self-employed, so we have to take our money that we earn and save for our future. And nobody gives us a pension. And not that I think it's not right that people don't have a pension. But at this time in history, when other major companies are walking away from pensions, why would we start to pick that up? And maybe there would be something else that you could maybe do for those people, but I don't think like full-out pensions is necessarily a good thing at this time. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about was, once again, I think that the money coming from the government, the ARP money, the statement was, when we can get our hands on the money. Because everybody always wants to get their hands on the money. But I don't think, again, I think I said this last week, and I don't want to repeat it again, that it's necessary that we want to always take this money from the government, which it isn't money that's tax money right now, it's money that's being printed, and it's money that's being borrowed from other places in the world. And so to just take that money because we can get our hands on it, to spend it, I don't know if that's really a wise decision for the long term in the country.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's what I have to say.
Yes.
My name is Mark Miner, and I also want to comment on the trustee voting process, which I think is unfair. It really didn't give people a chance to speak for other candidates. I'm hearing you guys looked at a resume, which is good, but like any job, you actually get interviewed, and you actually discuss what this person can bring to the table. I also endorse Ron, and he's got a great technical background that covered a couple decades. So his solution process in electronics and the different areas he's been in gives him a very logical mind and not a reactionary, emotional person on board. I think that's what this country needs in total, but starting in local government, we certainly can begin there. So I object to the process. You're not giving candidates a fair chance to participate and get involved. And I can vouch for Ron. He's very much involved with today's government and what's happening out there, the issues. So that's my thought.
Thank you very much. Anyone else would like to speak? Yes.
I'm Ron Mino, as you guys know. I sent you guys my resume, I sent you guys a lot of information about myself and what I've accomplished in my life and what I'd like to accomplish for this community. I too am very upset about the situation here where you basically were voted in candidate. Listen to the three people that were very qualified and then their aspects of what they could deliver for this community. I think that's atrocious. You should never do that. You should allow somebody to speak and tell you what they could do for this community, rather than just point somebody that you like. I think that's very concerning for this community to do such a thing. I think it's very sad that Mr. Rayfield right away point somebody, rather than saying, let's listen to the three candidates we have available. I see that they're both most likely here. I think that would have been a better way to go about this. I'm sure you have read my resume. You understand my abilities and what I could do and what I could bring towards this community. Just like we were discussing about the satellite systems for internet and other methods that you guys will be needing for future decisions. I think that's what I would have brought to you. And it's sad that you won't be enjoying that.
Thank you. Anybody else for public forum? Yes, go ahead.
Good evening, I'm Bob Schramm, 166 Annandale Drive, and I want to make it clear, I'm speaking here only for myself, not for the LOPOA or any other organization. But I have a question for you. First, I want to lay a little groundwork for that one question. Over the past year, we've all experienced the ravages of COVID. In addition, I lost my mother at the age of 101. Most recently, we all experienced the very timely and death of Chuck Sargent. These events and those similar to them for other people have caused all of us to appreciate more about what we have, changes that we may want to do from what we've been doing. And most important, to spend more time with family. In Lakeville, one of the greatest ways to appreciate and pay attention to family is enjoying the water, the boating, the fish, the serenity, the vistas of the lake. Integral to that is the use of a dock in any other lake than Lakeville. In Lakeville, we are draconian on the limits placed on the use of our docks. One cannot spend family time on a dock where it is only 3 or 4 feet wide and as straight as an arrow. I've been born and raised in Michigan and spent my entire life on Lakeville Lake. I've also traveled our wonderful water wonderland extensively over the years and have never been on a lake that did not have L or T docks. The ordinance for docks are unreasonable and limits the fun things we can do with our family. My dad lived to 98, my mom to 101. Most of that time was spent on this lake. Their most favorite thing to do was sit on the glider on the T end of our dock and enjoy the fabulous Lakeville sunsets. This could not have been done with a straight dock that hampered a wheelchair and was difficult to navigate with a cane and did not hold a glider. Pure and simple, the Addison Township dock ordinance is unreasonable. 6 foot wide is unreasonable. Docks are now generally 4 foot long. 35 feet in length is unreasonable. Dock sections are typically 10 feet in, which means only a 30-foot dock can be installed. This causes a problem from those with shallow water depths. A straight dock may have been reasonable in 1988, but is no longer acceptable for either a social or a safety aspect. Our ordinance is unreasonable when 50% of our docks are either non-conforming or non-compliant. Our ordinance is unreasonable when the township has to spend enormous sums of money to sue our property owners, our valued taxpayers. Our ordinance is unreasonable when our courts and judges have to waste their precious time hearing frivolous dock ordinance citations. Our ordinance is unreasonable when the township supervisor has to spend time in trials under subpoena. Lastly, the entire ordinance is unreasonable in that it does not address the stated purpose of overcrowding, pollution, to preserve and enhance the quality of lakefront living, funneling, and other issues that are in the purpose of the ordinance. This ordinance is contrary to its stated purpose and needs to be rewritten, revised, or amended. All of these could have been avoided last year, but weren't. My question now to you is, given all of the above, all of the unreasonableness, all of the property owner consternation, if either I or the LOPOA comes back to you with a revised ordinance amendment that may address many of the concerns of the PC, will you seriously consider that proposal? Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I was going to say more of the same. I just don't understand why the Addison Township is fighting the people that serve you. You know, you're supposed to be serving us, not fighting us. And I don't understand that. I have a dock. It's L-shaped. It's not interfering with any boating traffic. It's back inside where the boats aren't supposed to come near me. The boats are supposed to stay 100 feet away from shore. It's not interfering. I don't think any of these docks interfere with anything. It's just that the ordinance is old and not been updated, and there's been no consideration for the people that live on this lake. We want you to work with us, not against us, and I don't understand why you're suing us and making us go to court. This does not make any sense at all. You know, why? Can you answer why? Why would you do this?
This is where we listen. I have an opportunity in the supervisor's report. Maybe I'll reply.
Okay.
Thank you. This is your opportunity. Okay, not hearing you anymore.
Bruce,
Yes.
sorry, Linda Hodges.
Yes.
I live on Cove Drive. I like you, Bruce. I think you've done a lot for Addison Township. I have nothing against Jacob or any other nominee for the position of trustee, but I am appalled by what happened here tonight. I am ashamed of what happened here tonight. And I don't think you're serving the community properly.
Thank you.
I would like to make another comment. Mike Bartlett, 1469 Rochester Road, Lakeville. To the comments that have been made here, there's been a lot of effort and open communication by the lake owners about this dock ordinance for 2 years. And we came humbly to this board with a logical, reasonable proposal for consideration. And as was done with this trustee replacement today, it was predetermined, closed-minded, and not listening to the public who you are asked to serve. And we understand there can be differences of opinion, but the proper protocol is to listen to the people that live here and pay for your salaries, pay for the care of the lake, and pay for the police patrol for the lake, and do all the maintenance. I mean, we humbly came here with a proposal asking it be updated because the ordinance was 30 years old, only to have it shut down by the planning commission without even any public discussion. You know, it is very similar to how this appointment just happened. You know, the whole concept of public governance is having open dialogue and having the opportunity to listen to your constituents and then actually serve them. That's why we're all called public servants, and we take a role such as yours. So I would like you to go to the record that what happened today was not, in my opinion, listening on behalf of all township residents who's the best candidate that should have been considered, because they weren't given an opportunity to talk. Nor are you serving the lake owners as public servants by not listening to their needs. I looked at the last invoices. I think you spent close to $11,000 with the attorney Listman, which I'm assuming most of that is taking lake owners to court. You know, that's just for 1 month, and if it's used for something else, I'm not aware of it. But Mr. Listman's the one's turning up on all the hearings. That's not good use of township monies, in my opinion, when a simple amendment would have resolved the issues for the lake owners that live on the lake. I would ask you to review our proposal that we submitted before and reassess it, because it was very, very logical and reasonable to be considered.
Thank you.
Mike McDonald, speaking for myself, even though I have an elected office up in Leonard. I was here in '88 and prior when the Lakeville Lake Association demanded that we do something as a township board, and we did. We created the Lake Overlay District, and we created everything that they wanted, and it was done legally, and it was done with everybody knowing what was going on. And I don't like the inference now, because I've been to several meetings, including the Planning Commission, and it was discussed, what the Lakeville, a committee of the property owners were trying to push through. And as I recall, the DNR has strict regulations about docks and what can be done on lakes that have public access, which is unfortunate. I was around when that happened too, and I didn't like that either. But the bottom line is that our trustees and supervisor have a tough job, and they have to sort through what is best for the greater good. As far as the candidates tonight, I think the board had plenty of information. They were familiar with Jacob Newby. They knew Mr. Renaud. The other candidate, I know him only by reputation, and I actually heard of Mr. Renaud, good and bad, by reputation. So I think you made a logical choice. I don't think Lori Fisher would like having somebody that ran against her for office on the board. I expected that there'd be some opposition on the board. And I think that Karen is probably as astute as anybody, knows Jacob, and I think Jacob will make a fine trustee. He's already proven he can do it. So that's really all I wanted to say. I think you're taking more heat than you deserve. I know how the Lakeville Lake property owners are. They want what they want, and they're good at what they do. They push their agenda. I think they're pushing for something that technically they just can't have, but that's really up to the planning commission and the township board. Thank you.
Rob Gazanik. Bruce, is there any update on the 24-year-old consent judgment for Copper Hills in regards to the test wells that were mandated by the judge? Are we ever going to see any water testing?
That's where we listen.
I know, just a question out there for you.
Okay. Do we have another question?
It's interesting how many of the comments tonight are common. It makes me wonder who's being served here. I've lived here for over 20 years, and in general, I have respect for this board. Yet I come to these meetings rather regularly, and I watch us drive the Queen Mary through on a consent agenda that doesn't create transparency. Okay, it may be illegal, but it doesn't create education amongst those who are being governed. It just simply gets through a legal requirement without any real discussion. And when I look at this appointment issue, other people have made some very valid points, but I want to make a specific one. I'm quite certain that when a motion is made and seconded, that ample discussion is appropriate. And this board did not allow for ample discussion tonight. You cut it off at the knees. And I'm embarrassed that you are my representatives for that action.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we'll close the public forum and we'll move on to the next Addison Township board reports. Anybody at the board level have any reports?
I do.
Yes, go ahead.
The Oxford Area Cable Commission would like to remind the residents that they do provide services for the community. They are regularly taping our municipal meetings for both Leonard and Addison Township, and that includes the ZBA and the planning commissions when they do meet. They also appear and film like events like the Strawberry Festival, and they do interviews with businesses in the district. They do some summer events at Addison Oaks and the Pollyant Trail, and they also do a regular program called Read Me a Story at the Addison Township Library. So I just want to make sure our residents are aware that those programs are out there for viewing.
With Oxford Addison Youth Assistance, typically we hold a fairly large gathering and we recognize the youth that deserve recognition. So with the COVID aspect, what we did was put signs in their at their house with the sign, and they still receive their certificates, and then they also receive usually some donations from local companies in Oxford. So it's a way to give tribute to the kids who are really working hard at school.
Okay. No legal communications?
I do have communications. I do have to address, because we received 3 requests for the positions that was addressed. We received 1 support letter for Ken Mathias. We received 2 support letters for Ron or Ken. We also received 1 support letter from Jacob Newby. All of these are available at the township office.
We'll go on to supervisor's report. I'll take the time to answer a few of the questions. I've been in office now going on 13 years. Deputy sheriff out here for 33 years in the area. We never ever, probably ever had a problem on the lake whatsoever with docks. The only problems we had maybe was with the boaters, a lot of them from the boat launch, whatever. The last few years, a person came in and said, I demand that you enforce the dock ordinance. I said, we've never really had a problem with that whatsoever. The person persisted and said, I have some violations. I'm going to turn them in, and you better do something about it. I didn't do anything. A little bit longer, the person came back, what have you done about the dock violations? One of them was right off the get-go, out by the swimming area, big docks. I said, well, I haven't done anything about it. I didn't myself see it as a problem. The person came back and said, I demand that you do something about the dock ordinance, and handed me a copy of the dock ordinance. really don't see a problem here. I don't know why it's become a problem. And I was advised if I didn't handle the dock ordinance, that I would be taken to court for malfeasance in office because I didn't enforce a duly registered ordinance. I turned this over to the planning board, trying to appease a person. And I said, the planning board needs to look at this. Our law, our ordinance emulates the state Eagle, okay? That's the part DNR. It emulates that ordinance. Actually, we're a little more lenient. I offered, as an appeasement, to go to the state level. If people were willing to do that, I would then forgive our ordinance and go to the state one, which just about every lake on Oakland County is with the state level. I didn't receive any correspondence. People didn't want that, simply because the DNR won't enforce anything. They're overloaded. So the planning board came back with a recommendation that our ordinance was a good ordinance, and it was intended to be a good ordinance back in 1988, when all the other lakes saw the lakes becoming cement ponds. When everybody was putting cement right up all the way to the lake, go to Cass Lake, go to all these other lakes, go to Lake Orion. They wanted this lake to stay natural. I agree with that. We have one of the most beautiful lakes in all Oakland County because somebody back in 1988 had the forethought to say, we don't want this to turn into the other lakes. We want this to be like a natural lake like up north. And they had that forethought back in 1988. So I had to hire another ordinance officer because there's a choice. I go to court and defend myself for not enforcing dereliction of my duties. I'm the executive branch. I have to enforce the ordinance. It's either I go and defend myself why I am not adhering to the law, or I enforce the law. And then you ask me why the dock ordinance was enforced. That's why. That's a pretty short answer. So I did my duty, and I'll do it again if somebody forces me and says that I'm derelict in my duties, and I will be the one that will be the person defending myself. And if somebody says to our deputies, they don't like that stop sign, that three-way stop sign at Rochester and Lakeville, and I've been running through that stop sign for the last 20 years, and I just got a ticket. I'm going to say whether you're awfully lucky for the last 20 years. Now, you got a ticket. Doesn't make it that it was right that you ran through it 20 years, you got away with it for 20 years. And that's exactly what the person said to me when it said, I demand that you enforce those ordinances. And I will take your ordinance officer around the lake and point every one of them out to you. So my hands are tied. I will do the best I can at that job, and if the next supervisor doesn't want to enforce the ordinance, then maybe he can go to court, okay, and say why he doesn't want to enforce the ordinance. But I've been in law enforcement for a long time, and I know what my job is, and my job was to enforce the ordinance as it stood. Or you can go to the DNR ordinance. I'm sure this board will entertain that and allow you to go to Eagle, and then you can call the DNR if you have any issues with the dock ordinances. And the township will be out of the ordinance business as far as the docks are concerned. To me, I'd be happy to do that. The township is spending thousands of dollars on something that I never saw was a problem for the last 12 years. But when someone makes it so that this is my time, okay? But when someone makes it an issue that I have to handle, then by gosh, it'll be handled, okay? So we'll end that. The other thing I will say is Jacob Newby, first of all. I was looking for somebody who could walk right into this job. I have grants right now with SISMA that trustee Sargent was working on, and it's a big grant. It's for our invasive species, and I don't want to lose that. I have somebody that can go right to that meeting who knows about those. I have somebody that can go to SEMCOG who knows about that. And I have somebody that can go to the hazmat, who's handled the hazmat. Those are jobs that Chuck handled, and we're going to miss them. But I have somebody that has to pick up the pieces and go to that. Jacob has been a trustee for 4 years, and he came to all the meetings, and he did all of the work, just like Chuck did. Chuck and I worked at hazmat. Chuck was terrific at hazmat. I brought all the paint and the gas and everything, and Chuck was right there directing traffic. But Jacob also handles that, and he'll do that. And that's what we need at this point. And if you look at where all the candidates, they were all great candidates. And I'm happy, and I hope that we can work with Mr. Renaud and have him bring in all this information to us, because I don't know it, and he knows it, and I would really appreciate that he'd help the township out and maybe come and ask to be on some of these boards and help us. Jacob lives right by the lake. Okay, he looks at the lake every day. That's where Chuck Sargent came from. If you look at all the applicants, they were all up in the northwest horse country, where I am, where Lori is. That's 4 of us. That's a total vote in that one whole section of the township. They would control everything. That old saying, not in my backyard. So if 4 people decided on this board to say, we don't care what went on, or there's something else that goes over in the southeast section or the southwest section of the township, nobody has anything to speak up. There's no trustee. I have Pauline in the southwest, and I have Linda up in the northeast, and now I have Jacob that's around the lake where Chuck Sargent was. I'm looking out for the best interests of the township so that everybody is treated equally. We weren't looking to have a quorum up in the northwest section of the township who could control everything at everybody else's expense. So it's a tough job. You may say that this went whatever, how it went, but it's for the best interest of the township as a whole, and we do the jobs that we do the best we can, okay? And I know not everybody's going to be happy. Nobody's going to be completely happy, but it is what it is. I'll go on to another thing that I just met with the Michigan State Extension about the gypsy moths. Okay, gypsy moths, the part about the caterpillars are gone now. Okay, it's into the next phase of the actual moth itself. Okay, and I got quite an education here, and I do have all the information so that we can do a survey in the fall, and they do recommend that we coordinate with Bruce Township, Oxford Township, and the whole area, and we'll get a cheaper rate on flying. They say it's somewhere around $140. I believe that in Rochester Hills, they paid $190, but they said if we coordinate, it's $140 an acre to spray. And this spray is just a natural bacterium that's in the ground. That's what kills these, okay? And we're in about the 2nd year or 3rd year of this infestation. They think there's about 2 more years of this and they will die down. If you notice right now, the oak trees, the leaves are starting to come back up. The problem is the trees are very stressed. If we get another year of this and they eat the leaves, we'll lose the oak trees. And I asked if it was just the oak trees, they said no. They found out gypsy moths eat every tree. It's not just that. So I've recommended that the board that we will pay for the survey in our township to find out. They will start laying their nest in the fall. They come out, they find out where these nests are. We'll have a good handle on where our real problem is, and then we'll figure out how we're going to pay for it. If we sprayed the whole township, it was $3.5 million. Well, that's not going to happen, okay? But if we pick the areas and hit them, and that's what they're doing in Bruce Township, and I'll coordinate with Jack Curtis, the supervisor, and Oxford, because our huge infestation, it blows with the wind, and the wind is generally out of the west, blowing to the east. And if you notice, Bar Road is a disaster right now, both sides. So it's coming across into our area, and the residents down at Harmony Hills, and they are having, well, now it's into the mall stage, but they are having a terrible problem. So we will work on that. I wanted to let everybody know that I do have a handle on it now, and we'll work on it. So, other than that, I think I'll be looking for an adjournment, a motion for an adjournment.
Also moved.
Support.
And we have support. All those in favor of an adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you very much for your time.